the former federal senator, David Leyonhjelm. He's a lead candidate for the Liberal Democrats in Saturday's election. He's hoping to win a spot in the Legislative Council or the Upper House. And part of his congestion-busting plan involves getting people to ride motorcycles. Now, he's a motorcyclist. I'm a motorcyclist. One of the reasons I began riding and getting a licence to jump on a motorcycle, apart from what I'd done for many years in the bush, was to avoid the gridlock. Hated the gridlock. The other compelling reason to be on a motorcycle would be the ease of parking. Now, this is something that goes on in Melbourne quite successfully. The fact that you can allow motorcyclists to put their motorcycle on a widened footpath. And it works. It works incredibly. And the number of people who use motorcycles to get into the city in Melbourne far outweighs the numbers in Sydney, and I think because of that one rule. Well, the Liberal Democrats leader David Leyonhjelm joins me on the line to talk about that. Former Senator, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chris.
I don't know how to address you anymore.
David will be fine.
David will be fine. You've ridden a motorcycle for a long time. Explain to my listeners exactly how this parking allowance works in the city of Melbourne. I've seen it many times and it works so successfully.
Yes, it is you're right, it is extremely successful. Where the footpath is wider than a certain distance, I'm not sure of the exact technicalities, but there obviously has to be enough room for people to walk past. You are permitted to park a motorcycle on that footpath. In some areas, and this is within the CBD, so this doesn't include the suburbs surrounding, it's up to them whether or not they allow that. But in some areas, the footpath is too narrow to allow bikes. In other areas, it's fine for the bikes to park as long as they park lengthways along the footpath. And then there are whole areas, and Collins Street's a very good example in Melbourne CBD, where they can park across the direction of the footpath, so you can actually fit a large number of bikes in. And of course, it's encouraged people to ride bikes. They can ride in, park pretty much outside their place of work, and for every bike that's used to get to work is probably one less car. And as you and I would know, one bike only takes up the space of approximately a quarter of a car space. So tremendous reduction in congestion.
For my motorcycling mates in Melbourne, they say they wouldn't normally ride to work, but ever since this parking law came in, they got out of the car and got back on their motorcycle, not just on weekends, but Monday to Friday.
Yes, absolutely right. I have the same experience. Lots and lots of people who said they'd never have ridden to work on a motorbike. They would have driven their car in and tried to find somewhere to park or paid for it more often, and so they ride their bikes in. So it takes cars off the street. It's a tremendous idea. Now, obviously, Sydney its history is different. It doesn't have the same wide footpaths everywhere, and so the footpaths in some areas are not wide enough to allow bikes and pedestrians, but there are still plenty where that is a possibility.
Yes, correct.
But even so, I don't want to... The Sydney City Council is actually better than most councils in Sydney. At least it allows you to park in the metered area without paying, and as long as you don't exceed the time limit on the metered area, you can actually park there. Now, you go over the border into the council area where the Botanical Gardens is, for example, and they'll lock you up and throw away the key for even having the temerity to park there.
Yeah.
So the Sydney City Council is actually better than average, but still they've got a long way to go to catch up to Melbourne.
Yeah, the other thing is people need to be aware of, you can get in a bus lane, as long as it just says bus lane and it doesn't say bus lane only. Motorcyclists can use that bus lane. So for those who use their cars and see motorcyclists in a bus lane and think to themselves, well, that's a dirty trick, they shouldn't be there, you're allowed to be there. So, in fact, you've got your own lane to get into the CBD if you're smart enough.
Yes, that's right. It makes a huge difference, as a matter of fact, of getting around the city. And then, if you add to that the fact that we are now allowed to filter between traffic, but provided the cars are travelling no faster than 30 k's an hour, that also also means you can get through the traffic. But you know, Chris, there are plenty of countries in the world where they are much more motorbike friendly than Australia is. And one of the things they do also to help with traffic is provide what they call safety boxes or refuge boxes or whatever in front of the car traffic at traffic lights. So the bikes go filtering up between the rows of traffic, get to the traffic light at the white line there, and there's a box for them to all congregate then. Because they've got, they're much faster than cars, they can get away as soon as the lights turn green. They're all off and away and out of the road. It doesn't bother the cars at all. But of course we don't have that in Australia. Now, if we had a motorbike-friendly policy instead of this attitude that everyone who rides a motorbike is an idiot and, you know, intent on committing suicide, we would have things like that. We wouldn't have tolls on motorbikes either. Motorbikes pay the same tolls as cars in New South Wales, as they don't in Victoria. That's a disincentive to ride motorbikes as well.
And the other gripe I've got to say, David, if you've got any experience of trying to park in the city of Sydney, is the fact that there are so few motorcycle parking bays, and they're all full as a goog, and you can never get your park your motorcycle there. And I've often parked like, you know, half a foot from the end of a motorcycle bay, and I've been pinged.
Yes, the same thing happens to me as well. And that could be partially fixed, of course, by allowing parking on the footpath, similar to Melbourne. But the other thing is, I think the City of Sydney Council, and perhaps even the state government, I intend to look at this, assuming I'm elected at this election, there ought to be something that sort of is an incentive for car park operators in the city to provide parking for motorbikes. Most motorbike riders don't like paying for parking at all, but if they know they're getting a discount compared to cars, and usually about is accepted as being reasonable, then I think motorbike riders would say, okay, that's a fair deal, I'll take that up. But there's very few of the commercial car parks in the city that have any provision for motorbikes at all, and that needs to change. And I think it's within the power of the state government to actually provide an incentive of some description for the car park operators to change that.